Hi team, today we're going to delve into the Rhône. Now, the Rhône is an area in the south of France. It's closer to Italy, and I will share my screen so we can get the general sense of where it's located. Here we go. Okay, so this is our map of France, of course, courtesy of Wine Folly. Love them, great information. So here's the totality of France. Here's the Rhône Valley. It is this bright magenta area right here, nestled between the Languedoc-Roussillon and Provence. Okay, so as you can see, it's got this large hot pink area here, and it goes up to this skinnier area here. You'll also see where my cursor is that it says Rhône, and that is because the Rhône Valley is, and the wine region is named after the Rhône, which is a river that flows in from Switzerland. Okay, so now we know where we are. We have some major cities here like Avignon, Orange, and Nimes, and Marseille down here. So when we're thinking about rosé country, which is a different video, this is where the bulk of that is coming from. Okay, so now that we know that, I'm gonna stop sharing for a mo. Now, as usual, I want to focus on the bulk of the wine production that you're gonna see from this region. Okay, these, even more so than a lot of other regions in France, the vast quantity of wine is going to be red wine, and it's going to be coming from the general AOC of Côte du Rhône. Of course, that means the sides of the Rhône. So following along the river valley, that's where all the wine is going to be grown and produced. And as you get closer to the Mediterranean, it's a bigger sweep of land. And I'll show you more on the map there. Most of the wine is coming from the south. Okay, so the southern Rhône area. The Rhône is broken up into two major parts. And typically, the red grape dominant in the south for our bulk wines is going to be Grenache. So Côte du Rhône AOC is mostly going to be red, and it's going to be dominated by the grape Grenache. Okay. Some vineyards can specify a smaller appellation of Côte du Rhône village. So there's a few villages that have vineyards surrounding them that are allowed to use that label on their appellation and to name the village. In theory, that should mean that it's a higher quality wine. But most of the wine that falls under this general umbrella appellation is bulk industrial scale négociant wine. Does that mean it's bad? No, it just means that they make a shitload of it. It's generally very affordable. That's why when you go to France, you can buy wine in the supermarket and it's like €2, and it is way better than our $2 chuck that we have here. So the range of quality is vast. It's usually a good deal, but don't expect it to necessarily knock your socks off. It's going to be like dependable table wine. So I'm probably going to keep the map up for the majority of this video because it's going to be really important for pointing out things of note. So bear with me. We're going to share the screen again. Right. And we're going to switch over to our map of the Rhône. Okay, so you can see I just tightened in to that area that was in hot pink before. So again, here's Marseille down here. Here's the Languedoc starting over here. And this is the southern Rhône down here, all of this pink business. You can see it's a much larger area than the northern Rhône up here. So let's just zoom in. Let's see how, oh, that's about as far as I can go. Okay. You can easily search this map for yourselves. Now, this is the Mediterranean down here, causing us to have a Mediterranean wine climate up here. What does that mean? It means we have really hot summers and very mild winters. So it's never really going to snow. It can get chilly and damp from the humidity, but it's not going to get, really freezing cold there. One super important thing about the Rhône, as I was chatting with a friend of mine about, is that there's a lot of microclimates. So you're going to get, even though you're in this really tight area that's not very big, you're going to get a lot of difference. By microclimates, I mean these little pockets of weather systems that can greatly affect the wine from like here to just over here. Important things to know about the Southern Rhône. As I said, most of the wine that's produced is red. They do produce rosé, they do produce white wine as well. But for red wine, for right now, the major players in terms of grapes are Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre. Now, you'll often hear that referred to as GSM. People will say, oh, I love a GSM blend. That's what they mean, Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre. And usually they are referring to this area. The other two grapes are the two Cs, Cinsault and Carignan. There are more grapes in this region, but these are the most important ones. What kind of red wine can we expect from these from this area? They are full-bodied. Remember, Mediterranean climate, very hot, which means our grapes get very ripe. Ripeness means sugar. Sugar translates to alcohol during fermentation. So we're expecting 14.5 to 15% and up in terms of alcohol. So full-bodied, ripe fruit, black olives, black cherry, usually not oaky though. There's a reason for this. Grenache and new oak don't play well with each other, so Grenache is usually fermented in concrete, so it doesn't get exposed to too much oxygen. So you're not going to get that new oak flavor in this region. If they use oak, it's neutral oak. Okay, so that's pretty important. We're getting a full-bodied wine, but not an oaked wine, and that means they're not going to get that vanilla caramel flavor. So some famous, you can see there's a lot of appellations here. I'm not going to stress you too much with those, but we should know things like Gigondas here and Vacheras. These are ones that we're going to see a lot on the label, especially here in the US, you will see that. The most famous one is Châteauneuf-du-Pape, which is located right here. You can see it's just north of Avignon. So this is a cool story. Châteauneuf means the Pope's new house. In 1309, the Pope moved from the Vatican in Rome and reestablished the papacy in Avignon. There was political infighting, yada, yada, the Catholic Church, always causing trouble and drama. And what happened in terms of wine is that you have this really important political center now centered in France. And at the beginning, they are bringing their wine in from Burgundy, which is up here. But it does cause a domino effect of improving the wine quality from the surrounding area because now there's a need for it. Now, wine had been being made here since 600 BC. So it's not like planting vineyards is a new thing in the area, but in terms of high quality and dependability, that really changed at the start of the 1300s when there's a call for it. From that point forward, it remains a famous wine region. So Châteauneuf-du-Pape, very famous, commands a pretty good price. You can use up to 19 different varieties of grapes, 10 red, 9 white. You don't have to memorize them, but obviously Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre, Carignan, and Cinsault are important, and you can blend in a bunch of other things there. There is also famous white wine, white Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and as I mentioned before, we do get white wine production in this area. What you can expect from white wines from the Rhône is really full-bodied, waxy, rich tropical fruits, and like kumquat. Okay, they tend to be very low acid because again, it's really hot here and these are low acid grapes. So when we think about the Rhône, we should be thinking full-bodied wines in every style. I'm not going to get into rosé in this video. It's just a whole nother can of worms. I'll talk about it in a different video, but just know we do make it. I think this is a good time to pause and say, why blend? Yes, I just mentioned that in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, you can put up to 19 different grapes. So generally blending, whether it's here in the Rhône or in other places, there are a couple reasons and they overlap. First of all, practicality. It's what you have. It's what your grandfather planted and co-planted in the vineyards. And it's way too big of a pain in the ass to try to, harvest from one plant to the next plant at a different time because they ripen at different times and all this. No, you're not going to bother with that. You're just going to harvest everything you have planted in the vineyard. Okay, so practicality trumps all. Second, you're mitigating risk by blending different grapes together. What do I mean by that? Let's say Syrah has a bad year. Well, we can just put more Grenache into our blends. Another grape doesn't do well or it gets wiped out by pests. We can very practically still make wine that year, and we can assure that it's still a good quality wine across the board. And then, certainly from a more modern approach, different grapes give different qualities to the wine. So you can add, subtract grapes depending on what you need more or less of. So some grapes have more tannins, some have more acid, some have more aromatics, some have a deeper color and pigmentation. So you can kind of tweak the levels like on a stereo to get the ultimate wine that you want. So moving on, we're going to go up here to the Northern Rhône. Now, remember I mentioned that the bulk of the wine from Côte de Rhône comes from down here. Well, you can see it's a much bigger area. So this orange area is the Northern Rhône. So the reason we don't get a lot of bulk wine here is because they can use the appellation name for all of the wines coming out of here, which means they can command a better price. Why are you going to make bulk wine when you can make an appellation named wine? Big difference here, again, going back to microclimates, this is continental climate up here. It's much colder. Continental means that we're going to have warm summers with very cold winters, and it's much cooler overall versus the Southern Rhône here. Now, the king grape here is Syrah. So if it's on an appellation name, it is Syrah here as our red grape. That is the leader grape. And that's what you're going to see in any of the AOC appellations. Depending on the appellation in here, you can blend in some white wine. Okay, so you can either blend Viognier or Marsanne and Roussanne, depending on which appellation it is. And there are also appellations strictly for white wine here and sparkling wine here. You don't need to memorize that, but I just want you to know in the Northern Rhône, you're going to see red wine, white wine, and some sparkling wine, small production. Over here, don't worry about this green area too much. That's the appellation for D. They make often sweet sparkling wines. You'll see that they drink kind of like a Moscato d'Asti, if you're wondering what they taste like. So as I mentioned, we have Syrah as our red grape, and our major white grapes are Marsanne, Roussanne, and Viognier. And there are a ton of other ones that are used in the Southern Rhône. We have Grenache Blanc, we have Claret, we have Marsanne, we have Bourbon, and I already mentioned Roussanne, Marsanne. Ooh, okay. The important appellations that I want you to remember from the Northern Rhône are Côte Rôtie. I want you to remember Saint-Joseph, Cornas. You should know about Crozes Hermitage and Hermitage. You see the name Hermit there is named after a guy who said, I want this land. The queen gave it to him, and he said, I just want to be a hermit on it and live a simple religious life. There's a hill there. It's very famous for quality wine production. What can we expect from red wine in the region? Well, Syrah has tastes of green olives. We get dried herbs, purple fruits, plum, deep, dark, big wines, basically. You can drink them young, but they can also age for a very long time. And the whites, you can expect the same as from the south, but generally of a higher quality. Condrieu is the appellation that they make, the most famous one that makes only white wine from 100% Viognier. they're rich, they're big, they're waxy, they're thick wines. They can also age, in terms of white wines, they can age very well. Okay, back to blending. The other reason that I didn't mention previously is that with blending, we often get happy accidents. And in the Northern Rhône, we have one of those happy accidents. Syrah there, as I mentioned, is often blended with Viognier. And it was probably started just out of need, right? I've got these in my vineyard, I'm going to blend them together. Great. However, you would think that when you add Viognier to Syrah, it would water down the wine, right? Like make it less purple, less intense. But actually, the Viognier helps stabilize the pigments in the Syrah. So we have this chemical reaction that's actually causing the Syrah to stay this bright, intense purple color for longer, so that when you open it after several years of aging, it still has that intensity and that brightness. The Viognier also adds a floral element and a silky mouthfeel. As I said, the whites here tend to be pretty dense, and so you get that waxy, silky feeling on your palate. Lastly, because I'm trying to keep this short, I'm going to mention the very famous wine called Le Mistral, Le Mistral. Hard going back and forth. This is a wind that comes in from the north, sweeps all the way to the south, and it's going to have this funneling effect down the river. It is a very powerful wind. It can cause crop damage. However, it's really famous for helping the wines in this area, because what it does is it reduces humidity, which could lead to fungal infection. So when it rains, it actually is going to help dry out the vines and prevent humidity buildup that will lead to infection. It has a cooling effect. As I mentioned, it's hot as hell here. Gets well above the hundreds in the summer, which you think would, cook the grapes and make the vines shut down, but it actually helps have a cooling effect throughout the region. And this is pretty cool. It helps sweep the clouds away. So it literally blows the clouds away, which creates really sunny, consistent weather. If you've ever been to the south of France, you have a lot more clear, sunny days than not, when the rest of France can be kind of cloudy and gloomy. It's sunny in the south of France due to the Mistral. As you guys know, I will make you a study guide. I love to say, don't panic, don't freak out. I know I said a lot here, but I will make it very clear what it is that I'd like you to learn and have as a takeaway from this class today. So the Rhône, get to know it, get better at selling it. Taste it, taste as much as you can. They tend to be very reasonably priced, so you're able to taste around and get a sense for what I mean by those notes. All right, good luck. Until next time, I'll see you soon.